The chamber was silent yet heavy with unspoken tension. The name Charlie Kirk echoed across headlines, television screens, and whispered conversations in the halls of power. His murder had shocked the political world, sparking outrage from his supporters and disbelief among critics. But behind the grief, a new storm was forming, a battle not only for justice but for truth itself. And at the center of that storm stood Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Known for her fiery style and refusal to back down, Crockett had made a career out of challenging the comfortable and demanding accountability where others preferred silence. But this case was different. This was not another policy debate or committee hearing. This was about life, death, and a nation watching closely to see if justice would be served, or buried. On the steps of the Capitol, cameras flashed as Crockett approached the microphones. Her voice cut through the noise of protesters and journalists shouting questions. We cannot allow Charlie Kirk's murder to be swept under the rug. We cannot let this case become another example of justice delayed and justice denied. The American people deserve answers, and I will not stop until they get them. The crowd erupted, half in applause, half in skepticism. Some saw her as a hero, finally taking a stand where others hesitated. Others dismissed her as grandstanding, using a tragedy to score political points. But whatever side people chose, one fact was undeniable. Jasmine Crockett had inserted herself into the center of one of the most controversial cases in recent memory. Inside Congress, whispers turned to shouts. Lawmakers questioned whether her involvement would politicize the investigation. Lobbyists and pundits warned that digging too deeply could uncover truths too dangerous to reveal. Yet Crockett seemed unmoved. In her own words, if the truth makes you uncomfortable, then maybe you should ask why. The early days of her crusade were marked by clashes with reporters, heated debates with colleagues, and an endless flood of media commentary. The murder of Charlie Kirk was no longer just a criminal case. It had become a symbol of power, corruption, and the fragile line between justice and politics. Narrator. And as Jasmine Crockett took the first steps on this path, one question loomed over Washington. Was she walking into a fight for justice, or into a trap carefully set by those who feared the truth? The stage was set, the players were ready, and the nation braced itself for a showdown that promised to shake the very foundations of trust in American institutions. The deeper Jasmine Crockett pushed, the more resistance she encountered. What began as calls for transparency quickly transformed into a battle against an invisible wall, a wall built of silence, secrecy, and powerful interests who wanted this story buried. In committee hearings, Crockett's voice rose above the procedural monotony. If Charlie Kirk's killer acted alone, then why are witnesses afraid to testify? Why are crucial documents being sealed under national security? Who benefits from silence? Her questions echoed through the chamber, drawing sharp glares from colleagues who wished she would stop. But Jasmine would not stop. Behind the scenes, leaks began to surface, files hinting at connections between the accused killer and wealthy donors with deep ties to Washington. Rumors swirled about backroom deals, political favors, and even threats made to investigators who dared to dig too far. Every new revelation only hardened Crockett's resolve. Reporters chased her down hallways, shouting over one another, "Congresswoman, do you have evidence of a cover-up? Are you accusing the Department of Justice of corruption? Is this about justice or politics?" Her answer was sharp, uncompromising. This is about truth, and if the truth makes people in power uncomfortable, then so be it. Yet the pressure mounted. Conservative pundits accused her of exploiting a tragedy. Liberal strategists warned she was giving Trump and his allies ammunition. Even within her own party, whispers grew louder. She's going too far. She's becoming a problem. Still, she pressed on. At one rally, standing before a crowd of supporters holding signs that read "Justice for Charlie" and "Expose the cover-up," Crockett's voice thundered. This is bigger than Charlie Kirk. This is about whether our system protects the truth or protects the powerful. And I will not be intimidated. Not by politicians, not by lobbyists, not by anyone who wants to hide behind the shadows. The applause was deafening, but so were the threats that followed. Anonymous messages flooded her office. Social media campaigns painted her as reckless, even dangerous. The narrative was shifting, and with it, the stakes. Narrator. With each step forward, Jasmine Crockett walked deeper into a labyrinth of secrets. The murder of Charlie Kirk was no longer a case. It was a mirror reflecting the darkest corners of power, and every move she made brought her closer to the truth, and closer to those who would do anything to stop her. The tension was rising, allies were scarce, enemies were multiplying, and Washington was holding its breath, waiting to see if Jasmine Crockett could withstand the storm. The day of reckoning arrived. The House chamber was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Lawmakers shuffled in their seats, reporters scribbled furiously, and cameras zeroed in on the woman who had become the center of the storm, Jasmine Crockett. She stepped to the microphone, papers in hand, her face set with determination. "For weeks I have asked simple questions," she began, her voice steady but sharp. "Who benefits from silence? Who is protecting the man accused of murdering Charlie Kirk? And why are those who seek answers being threatened into silence?" The room grew tense. Across the aisle, her opponent smirked, ready to dismiss her words as political theater. But Crockett wasn't here to perform. She was here to accuse. She lifted a folder and slammed it onto the desk. "These documents show interference, evidence withheld, witnesses pressured, and powerful donors moving money into the shadows to ensure this case disappears. If this is not a cover-up, then tell me, what is it?" Gas rippled through the chamber. Some lawmakers shifted uncomfortably. Others erupted, shouting objections. The speaker's gavel pounded for order, but the moment had already exploded. One congressman rose, pointing across the room. "This is reckless. You're jeopardizing national security," Crockett fired back without hesitation. "National security or political security, because the only people endangered here are those who profit from silence." The crowd outside the chamber could be heard chanting through the walls. "Justice for Charlie! Justice for Charlie!" Their voices rattled the glass, their passion fueling the moment. Chief Justice John Roberts, though not seated here today, had already signaled his unease with her accusations, but Crockett leaned into the cameras, addressing not just the chamber, but the entire nation. "I know they'll call me reckless. I know they'll say I'm making this political. But here's the truth. When someone is murdered, when evidence is hidden, when power shields the guilty, that is not politics. That is corruption. And if calling it out makes me a target, then so be it." The chamber erupted again, this time with both applause and outrage. Lines were drawn deeper. Allies rallied around her. Opponents vowed to shut her down. Narrator. This was no longer about one case. This was about the soul of justice itself. Jasmine Crockett had crossed the line from investigator to whistleblower, exposing what she claimed was a conspiracy at the heart of power, and with that, the battle entered its most dangerous phase. For Jasmine, there was no turning back. The truth, or the illusion of it, was now public. The question was no longer whether she would fight, but whether she would survive the fight she had unleashed. When the gavel finally struck, calling the hearing to a close, the chamber was still vibrating with tension. Some lawmakers hurried out, avoiding reporters' questions. Others stayed behind, whispering in tight circles, their faces pale. The shock of Jasmine Crockett's accusations was still settling over Washington like a storm cloud that refused to break. Outside, the streets around the Capitol were alive with noise. Supporters carried banners, "Justice for Charlie," "Expose the truth," and "No more cover-ups." Protesters clashed with counter-protesters, each side shouting their version of justice. The nation once again found itself split, not just over guilt or innocence, but over whether the system itself could be trusted. Back in her office, Crockett stood before the cameras one last time that day. Her voice was calmer now, but no less resolute. "I didn't take on this fight because it was easy. I took it on because someone has to. Charlie Kirk's murder isn't just about one life lost. It's about what kind of country we want to be. Do we want a justice system that serves the people, or one that protects the powerful? I will keep pushing until we have that answer." Her words cut deep, echoing across the evening news broadcasts. For her supporters, she had become a symbol of courage, a politician willing to risk her career for the truth. For her critics, she was reckless, a destabilizing force in an already fractured system. But no one could deny her impact. She had turned the murder of Charlie Kirk into something far larger, a national reckoning. Narrator. In the end, Jasmine Crockett's fight was more than a demand for justice. It was a mirror held up to America, revealing both its hunger for truth and its fear of what that truth might expose. Whether she uncovered a conspiracy or simply stirred one into being, her stand will be remembered as a moment when silence was no longer an option. The questions lingered, heavier than before. Was there really a hidden network protecting Charlie Kirk's killer? Were powerful hands pulling strings behind the scenes? Or had Crockett turned grief into theater, amplifying suspicion until it became a national obsession? One thing was certain, the story was not over. The battle for justice had only just begun, and the world was watching. What do you think? Did Jasmine Crockett uncover the beginnings of a real conspiracy, or was this political theater at its peak? Tell us in the comments. Your voice matters. If you found this breakdown gripping, hit like to help more people see it, and subscribe for more deep dives into the political showdowns that shape our nation, and sometimes shake it to its core. Because in the struggle between truth and power, every moment counts.